The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Sign the promo code SGPN to claim your first-time deposit offer of bonus cash on Nordic Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL projections are now live. Claim your set and free all today by going to sportscampus.com/rhythm, sportscampus.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Monday morning, roughly 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time on August 12th. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode, but because it is time to get into a final. We have the final in Montreal between Rublev and Papiron, so we're going to preview that matchup in a second. Do want to briefly update everybody on the actual schedule. Originally, we were supposed to have the Cincinnati preview episode on Sunday night. However, they moved the matches. I believe that originally the tournament was supposed to have a bunch of matches on Monday, but since the tournament in Montreal went a bit long, I believe they moved every match basically to a day later. So as a result, we ended up getting most of the Cincinnati matches taking place on Tuesday instead of Monday. A couple of exceptions, though. I believe there are two matches in Cincinnati taking place on Monday. Paul's playing, and I believe the other one is Kashanov. Point is, though, most of the matches are not taking place until tomorrow, so we have extra time, and we could also wait for qualifying to finish. So we are going to do the Cincinnati outright episode at some point Monday night instead of Sunday night. So just keep that in mind. Either way, though, point is for this episode, only one match to preview. It's just because it is time to get into the final, as I said before, between Rublev and Papiron. Now, before we get into any of the actual preview of that matchup, do remind me once again that you can like and subscribe on YouTube, and also a reminder to download the podcast on Spotify or Apple if you want to get the audio version only, and you can still leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple if you do want to support the show. Plus a reminder, you can also go to the SGPN merch store to get some Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs. A lot of great overall content on the merch store and very affordable. So I recommend getting yourself something. Plus a reminder that we have other shows on the network, not just the tennis show, and all of those also have merch on the merch store. And if you want to talk about the main featured show for this week, it is the Sports Gambling Podcast, which did launch the 32 NFL team previews, and they're also giving out a very solid deal, which is that if you end up using the code word in each of the 32 episodes and you create your actual code phrase, you could be the winner of a $500 circa future for listening. Plus a reminder, the EPL is returning, so make sure to check out the Soccer Gambling Podcast and the EPL Gambling Podcast for your footy fix. Plus a reminder, subscribe to your podcast, and a reminder to download the SGPN app. It's time to get into the actual recap of what happened on Sunday. It was a bit of a weird schedule because you had a couple of semifinal matchups and a couple of quarterfinal matchups on the same day. However, we could not preview the Korda and Papiron match. That was late on Sunday night because they had to complete their quarterfinal matches first, and they had to play again for the second time on Sunday. So we couldn't cover that matchup. We had three matches to preview, and overall, they went well. Starting off with the lock, ended up winning, as we ended up having the Hurkacz and Papiron first set score through 6 games, 3-3 at -150. To be honest, sometimes it is better to be lucky than good for that win there, as we thought that it would be a pretty straightforward hold fest to start the match. Did not happen, as you saw Hurkacz get a break pretty early on, but then Papiron ended up breaking back, or vice versa. I mean, Papiron got the break immediately, and then Hurkacz got the break back, and as a result, they ended up holding the last time out to get the 3-3. So nice winner there. Not really the way that I drew it up, but still counts the same. So a nice winner for the lock. For the dog, never in doubt, had Rublev to win in straight sets at +110 against Rinaldi. That was the only semifinal matchup that we actually had for the episode, and it went the way that I thought it would. I thought Rublev would win comfortably. Thought he'd just be in solid form after beating Sinner, and I thought that he'd be the aggressor for the majority of the match. I thought Rinaldi would be too defensive, and I thought that he would struggle with his second serve, and that's kind of what happened, as Rublev did dominate, especially the second set. There was a bit of a weather delay, but then once they resumed play, Rublev killed them, and you ended up seeing Rublev win in straight sets rather convincingly. So, once again, a nice sweep, back-to-back sweeps on the show. Hopefully we'll make it 3 straight sweeps to end Montreal, then move on to Cincinnati. Either way, though, to get into the actual recap of the matches for Sunday in Montreal, you had a couple of marathons early. You had Papiron taking on Hurkacz. We did elect Papiron in that one, and he got the job done. First time beating Hurkacz. Wasn't easy, as Hurkacz did win the first set, and then you had a couple of marathon sets to end it. But Papirin was solid, and Hurkacz, I don't want to say he ran out of gas, but it just seemed like Papirin was a little bit sharper for the back half of that third set, and that was really all he needed, as he ended up getting a break in the 5-5 game, and he was able to serve it out to win the match. But either way, a point is Papirin finally beat Hurkacz. He was 0-3 lifetime. It was a bad spot, though, for Hurkacz, who had just came off of injury, and he ended up having to play 2 matches on Saturday, and then having to play the early match on Sunday. Not the best spot, and eventually saw Papirin to get the job done. Hurkacz did have to fight off basically 17 break points. He ended up getting to face 20, and he was able to fight off 17 of them. So the 3 breaks that Papirin did end up getting were the decider. But you saw Hurkacz kind of struggle with the serve for most of the match, at least defending, as Papirin did have a bunch of chances, and eventually he converted enough. 3 for 20, still not great, but it was better than nothing, as he got the job done in 3. So nice win there, and we did elect Papirin to get the job done in that one. So overall, good start to the actual card for Sunday. Then for the second match, we were a bit off on this one. We did think it would be competitive, though, so we were kind of right, but we picked the wrong guy to win. Korda got the job done against Zverev. Zverev was up a break in the first set. Then he choked it, as Korda won the first set via breaker. Then Zverev killed Korda in the second set, and I believe Zverev in that second set won 20 of 25 baseline points. So it just seemed like Zverev was on fire, and Korda kind of ran out of gas. And then Korda flipped the script, as he was able to fight off a break point in the back end of the third set. Then immediately got the boomerang break in the late stage of that third set. I believe in the 4-4 game, he got the break and then held to win the third set 6-4. I'd say it was a pretty interesting break that he ended up getting against Zverev, because Zverev was down to love 40, hit 3 absolute bombs on first serves, which were all unreturnable, and then he double faulted on back-to-back points to lose the break. So kind of a summary of Zverev, I guess, and you ended up seeing Korda get the job done in that one. And then once again, a reminder, Rublev did beat Arnaldi in straight sets, 6-4, 6-2, which was the dog for the show. So got that one completely right. Arnaldi's a solid player. Rublev was in good form, and I just thought there was a serious talent gap there, and there was, as Rublev destroyed him. And then for the last match, you had Papirin and Korda having to go again for the second time on a Sunday, and Papirin got the job done in straight sets. Pretty weird overall first set. Bunch of breaks, and you ended up seeing a pretty unexpected, chaotic set in general, and then it ended with a 7-0 tiebreak score in favor of Papirin. But Korda was actually up a break. He was up 6-5, and he ended up choking it to give the break back, and then he eventually kind of ran out of gas from that point forward, as Papirin got the break back, won the 7 points in the breaker, then immediately broke to start the second set, and then he eventually broke to end the match and to win it 6-3. So nice straight set win there for Papirin, and now he's in his first ever Masters 1000 final. So we didn't cover that actual matchup. If I had to guess who I thought was going to win that one, I would have assumed Korda. But either way, nice win there for Papirin, who has been looking sharp so far in the event after beating Dimitrov, fighting off a couple match points. Then he beat Hurkacz, and then he ended up beating Korda. So nice, I'd say, trio of wins there. We'll see how he does against Rublev in the final on Monday. Either way, though, nothing else to really recap for the card on Sunday, and now i'll move on to the card for Monday. So before we get into any of the actual preview for the final, I want to remind you once again, there are more picks on, or just a reminder in general, that we also have a really solid promo with Underdog Fantasy, because if you go 8-0, you can win 325 times your entry, and if you play fantasy football right away, the right way with Best Ball, Best Ball Mania is live with $15 million in prizes. They also have college football season-long projections, higher or lower for your favorite college football players. You can now use specials and boosts and all flex entries, and I'll probably end up using something involving either baseball or even tennis for my entries over the next couple days. Point is, though, sign up the promo code SGPN. Claim a special and for % positive offer of $0 bonus cash on fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Time to get into the actual final preview between Rublev and Papirin. Starting off with the actual betting lines here, Rublev is a pretty decent favorite, about minus 265. Papiron's around plus 225 for the game spread between minus 2.5 and minus 3 in favor of Rublev, and plus 3 for Papiron at around minus 105. For the over-under, 23.5 games, slight juice to the under at minus 120. For the set wagering here, the over 2.5 sets is plus 135. For the set spread, you have Rublev minus 1.5 sets at even money, and you have Papiron at plus 1.5 sets at around minus 130. Now, for the actual matchup in itself, got to mention the head-to-head, as you are looking at a pretty even battle so far in the head-to-head, as it's currently tied 1-1. Faced off this year, though, it was on clay, but Papiron did win that one in straight sets. I believe that was in Monte Carlo, and you saw them face off, which Papiron did win both sets 6-4, 6-4. Now, that was in the middle of April, so different surface, and a couple months ago, not sure if you could actually use that head-to-head data. They also faced off last year in Vienna on hard court, and Rublev did win 7-6, 6-4. So, point is, tied 1-1. Both of them ended in straight sets. Papiron did win the one meeting this season, but Rublev wasn't exactly in the best of form at that point. So, we'll see how both guys look here on Monday. Now, I have to at least point out the scheduling spot, because Rublev does have an advantage in that area, because Papiron has had to play a bunch of tennis recently, as you saw him play a marathon against Dimitrov. Then he had to go to two separate matches on Sunday. One was a war. The other one was a war for a set. And then Korda kind of ran out of gas. Point is, though, he's had to play a bunch of matches recently. And Rublev did not, as Rublev only had to play one match on Sunday, as he was able to beat Arnaldi in the final pretty convincingly and really wasn't on the court for that long. So it is pretty interesting to look at the actual scheduling spot when you have to look at a guy who's played 3 matches in 2 days, while one guy's played 2 matches in 2 days. So that does give Rublev an advantage in general. Now, you can argue that nerves will also play a factor, because Papiron's in his first ever Masters 1000 final, where Rublev's been here before, and he's won before. So nerves should be in favor of Rublev, because you could argue that's the biggest match that Papiron's ever been in. So we'll see how that goes. But point is, for this matchup, do I think Rublev should be about minus 265? I could understand it. You could argue that maybe it's a bit large, because Papiron's been able to upset some players recently. Dimitrov, Hurkacz, and Korda, who's in great form, fresh off of a 500 title and a win against Zverev. But I think for this matchup, Rublev should be the favorite. I think maybe you could argue like minus 220 is the line that I would set, but it's kind of nitpicking. Point is, Rublev should be a pretty decent favorite in my opinion, and we'll see if Papiron get the job done in this one. Now, I think for the actual form of both guys, even though Papiron has been beating some good competition, especially over the last 3 matches, I think you could argue that Rublev's looked sharper so far in the event. He's only dropped 1 set in the entirety of the event, ended up beating Sinner, and we know Sinner is a top 3 player in the world. Yes, Sinner got banged up in the 3rd set, but still a win nonetheless. Both guys have been good, though. I'm not going to pretend that one guy has looked head and shoulders above the other, but if you're asking who I think's looked like the better player so far in this event, I would tell you Rublev, just based on the eye test. Now, Rublev's had the weaker competition. I acknowledge it, but I think that he is in line for a pretty, in my opinion, solid showing here on Monday, just based on the schedule advantage for him and based on the overall form that I've seen from him after struggling for the last couple months. We know the upside is definitely higher for Rublev than it is for Papiron, and if he channels into that upside, he should be able to get the job done in this one. Now, I think one thing I got to mention for the actual match itself has been the weather for Montreal, because the wind's been a serious issue, especially for serving, and I do think first serve percentage can play a serious factor into this matchup, because Papiron's been having some issues double faulting, and I do think that his first serve percentage can be an issue that might end up deciding this matchup, because, for example, he has been really rough at actually double faulting, and I believe he's double faulted 5+ times in 3 of his last 4 matches. So that could be a problem, especially on big points, if he's going to be handing away a bunch of potential free points to a guy that's very dangerous in the spot, and maybe Rublev can get a break just by standing there if Papiron ends up double faulting on break point. Now, he did land 59% of his first serves against Korda, so that was fine. You could argue still low, but overall first serve percentages have been low in the event based on the wind. Against Hurkacz, though, his first serve percentage was 65%. So he got off to a bad start. He was only 55% in the first set against Hurkacz. Then he bumped it up to about 63 in the second set and around 76 in the 3rd set. So I feel like a lot of this match might come down to how accurate Papiron is with the first serve, and we have seen his first serve percentage dip to below 60 in a couple matches. If it dips below 60, I think he's going to lose to Rublev, and I think that if it's going to be above 60, he has a great chance to win. So keep that in mind. You might be able to find out early on where this match is heading, depending on Papiron's first serve percentage. Rublev, on the other hand, has been battling the wind well with the serve. He's really not double faulted that often in the event, and I do think that Rublev's kind of handled the, I say, serving in the wind a bit better, at least based on the eye test for both guys. Now, we do know that Papiron can ramp it up serve-wise, and I do think that he can win a bunch of free points if he's able to hit his spots. Still want to see how he looks in this one, and I do think that the serve could be the deciding factor for these two. Now, the overall style of both guys is based on a lot of firepower. Both guys will stand by on the baseline, and they will absolutely rip it. So I do think you're going to see a lot of pretty fun rallies from the baseline, a lot of really powerful shots, and we'll see who can potentially last longer in these, I'd say, aggressive rallies where both guys might be going for it and might be trying to hit the other guy off the court. And then you might see whoever can just keep the ball in play while maintaining that level of power, get the job done in this matchup. But if I had to go for who I think is going to be the more consistent option, I'd lean to Rublev, who I just think's the better baseline player, especially when he's in form, and it looks like he's regained that form. Unfortunately, I was one event early. I picked Rublev to win DC, and now he's in a final of the 1,000 event. So it was a little bit premature with Rublev, but the point is we know the upside's there. We know that he has been solid in several tournaments so far this year. Months ago, but still, we saw him win a clay title, beat Alcaraz, so we know that he's capable of getting the job done. Papiron's a guy who has some upside. He won Umag last year, but I still want to see him get through a massive final, and this is the biggest match he's ever been in. So I'm a little bit nervous that Papiron's going to blink in the actual spot, just based on the atmosphere and based on the, I'd say, importance of this matchup, and I think Rublev will be more likely to keep his overall consistency throughout the course of this matchup. But the fatigue angle could be an issue too, playing 5 sets in one day, then having to play again with no days off against the guy that only played 2 sets. I think it's a pretty decent advantage for Rublev if I had to say so myself. So I'm going to lean to Rublev in this one. If I had to go for the actual outcome, I would lean straight sets at about plus money. I know I mentioned even money before. I found one book with like plus 110. I think Rublev is going to get the job done, personally. Maybe it was the center match, but I just felt like watching him play, he looked like one of the best players in this entire field. Papiron's been good. Almost lost to Dimitrov, though. Hurkacz was in his first event post-injury, so you could argue that that Hurkacz match wasn't as impressive or wasn't as, I'd say, much of a statement win as you might have expected, at least based on the spot itself for Hurkacz. Not making excuses, a win's a win, but I wanted to at least mention that it was a pretty bad spot for Hurkacz. That's why we took Papiron to win the match. But beating Korda is a good win, too. Korda, though, did seem to run out of gas after having a marathon against Zverev earlier that day. I think it's a pretty interesting spot for both guys, but Rublev is in a better spot, in my opinion, based on the schedule and based on his overall experience in these big matches. I'm going to go with Rublev in straight sets, maybe get a breaker in there, but I do think you're looking at what should be a pretty fun match, pretty competitive, but I think it might end in straight sets in favor of Rublev. Tough to find value, though, if you are going to like a minus 265 favorite to win, but you do think that, once again, straight sets is a possibility, but not a guarantee. So you have to kind of thread the needle and try to find value there. The game spread I'm not interested in because you might end up getting one competitive set there, and maybe you end up getting a matchup that could, in theory, go 3. So not exactly sold on the spread there. But the point is, I am going to lean to Rublev in straight sets for the value. Maybe you get, once again, 1 or 2 competitive sets, but I'm going to trust Rublev to get the job done in this big matchup. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual preview for the Montreal final. That's going to be taking place, by the way, at around 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Monday. So you do have some time to actually get your bets in. Before getting into the actual lock and dog picks for the matchup, do want to remember once again, they're brought to you by Rhythm, because football season is here and college football and NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own winning betting model or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. You decide what stats matter to you the most, and Rhythm can help you build a custom model around it. Or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. They also have AI projections, and you can look at them having you covered for NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0. Sign up the promo code, claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportscampus.com, Rhythm, sportscampus.com, there's RITHMM. We're also brought to you by Circuit Survivor and Circuit Millions. Circuit Sports is back with Circuit Survivor and Circuit Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Don't have your booked yet for Las Vegas. What are you waiting for? All because weekend's a great time to go. You can hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events in the World of Sportsbook from August 22nd through the 24th. Use promo code SGP15, save you 50% of your hotel room for sign-up weekend. And a reminder, sign up in person to compete at the contest Circuit Sports between now and September 7th. You use a proxy from anywhere. We also have a deal with proxy. If you go to proxy.footballcontest.com, we save you $50 with the promo code SGP. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the final in Montreal between Papiron and Rublev. Now it's time for the lock-in dog pick. So once again, not the easiest match to actually predict based on the actual money line prices themselves and everything that's correlated to it. However, I am going to go with a bit of a bolder stance, and it's a play that I actually did not mention during the preview. I am going to go with the under 23.5 games, a minus 120 as my lock. Couple reasons why. First reason, I don't see each of the first two sets having at least 12 games. So far for both players, that outcome has not occurred in their respective runs. Papiron, for example, had a couple of marathon matches in the second and third set against Hurkacz, but his first set's been pretty straightforward. In fact, he has had each of the first two sets land below 24 in every single round of this tournament, so he's not gone over this total in the first two sets. As for Rublev, you're looking at his matchups do the exact same thing, as he has not had a match have at least 24 in the first two sets. So that being the case, I think you're looking at a spot where basically you're getting a discount for straight sets. Straight sets in the match is around minus 160. If you think that the only way you lose is 3 sets, then you are going to be saving 40 cents just by taking the under instead. And I do think you're looking at least one set ending with a 6-4 or 6-3. So you buy some leeway in that area. But you are looking at a couple of straight set matches between these two guys in the head-to-head, as it's currently tied 1-1. But each match did end in straight sets, and both matches did go under this posted total. Plus, to go through some overall individual trends here, 7 of Papiron's last 9 matches have gone under this total, and 5 of Rublev's last 6 matches have gone under this total as well. So I do think that there is a chance that Papiron could win. But the argument I'll make for the under is the fact that each guy has been very solid so far in the event, and you might be able to see one guy get going early, maybe just has the other guy's number, and you see one guy kind of dominate the matchup. But the point is, I do think that if you're looking for a value play, and you really don't see a 7-6, 7-6, or a 7-6, 7-5, or vice versa, the point is the only way you lose this bet would be 3 sets. And I think that fading a 3-setter at minus 120 is a pretty appealing option. We've seen the courts in Montreal result in a lot of overall breaking opportunities, and you have been looking at a bunch of overall matches where the winds played a factor, the court speeds played a factor, and you've seen a lot of overall breaks of serve in sets because of it. So I don't exactly expect each guy to hold 6 times in a row for this matchup. So that being the case, I am going to go with the value play, in my opinion, which is the under 23.5 games at minus 120 as my lock. For the dog, though, I'm going to kind of double down on the actual under for this matchup. I am going to go with the tie breaks, and I am going to go with the under half a tie break at plus 106. Tough to find value for the actual dog play in this. I mentioned before, Rublev in straight sets was a plus 110 play, but I think Papiron could win a set here, or maybe 2 sets here. So I do think that it wasn't exactly worth the risk for me. He's been in good form. I recognize the schedule spot in favor of Rublev, but Papiron has been solid. Want to give him some benefit of the doubt, and I'm not going to expect him to get immediately destroyed in this matchup. I think he might lose, but I do think that you're looking at a couple ways to get here for the breaker. You could win in straight sets. Maybe it's a straightforward win like Rublev had against Arnaldi in the semis, and it's rinse and repeat. Or maybe it ends up going to 3. We lose the lock, but each set does feature a break, and you end up getting the job done with a 3-setter that ends with a bunch of 6-4s. Point is, though, Rublev's not really been involved in many breakers recently, as each of Rublev's last 8 sets in this event have not gone to a tiebreak, and Papiron has gone to 4 tiebreaks in this event, which is why this is plus money. However, there were really a bunch of breakpoint chances in each of those sets. So 4 tiebreaks in the event. All 4 of those tiebreaks did have a bunch of breakpoints in those sets. There were at least 4 breakpoints in each of those sets. So the point is, it was never set in stone that you're going to get a breaker in any of those 4. And it just seemed like both guys did a good job of either breaking each other once or fighting off multiple breakpoint chances. Point is, though, Papiron has been kind of vulnerable to allowing breakpoint chances, and I do think that you're looking at Rublev, who should be able to generate some Tyron, though, has been good at returning so far in the event, and I think that if you're going to be getting a breaker into this match, you probably get one break apiece. So I don't expect each guy to hold 6 times in a row for this matchup. So with that being the case, I am going to go with a bit of a bolder play, going with the under half a tiebreak at plus 106. Plus, each of the last 3 head-to-head sets did not go to a tiebreak, so head-to-head does kind of support it. Point is, though, for the actual value here, I am going to go with the under half a tiebreak at plus 106. With the amount of breaks we've seen so far in the event, and with 8 straight sets for Rublev not going to a breaker, I do think that plus 106 is a pretty good value play. So I'm going to go with that as my dog. So once again, for the actual picks for the final in Montreal, the lock's going to be on the under 23.5 games at minus 120. And for the dog, I am going to go with the under half a tiebreak at plus 106. That's going to wrap it up for Montreal. A reminder, we'll back once again on Monday night for the preview episode for Cincinnati. Until next time, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the MLB show. Find me on the NBA show. And until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.